It's a Monday, and that's time to visit with Jim Duquette, former Major League Baseball GM, Mets and Orioles, MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM. Follow him on X at Jim Duquette GM. His weekly appearance brought to you by Flat Stick Pub. Whether it's a date night, guys night, ladies night, large group event, they've got you covered. Visit one of their 6 locations across the Northwest at flatstickpub.com. He's coming from Arlington. He's at the site of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. I'm in the Puck Sports Studios built by Limback Lumber. Contact the folks at Limback Lumber, 206-782-3487. Visit them online at limbacklumber.com. Puck Sports Studios built by Limback Lumber. All right, how's the All-Star Game festivity, sir?
Festivity's been good so far. As you know, minor issue getting into the ballpark. Security was really tight. Really over the top, ridiculous. We had huge lines that, I've never seen them this long. One other year we had lines that were this long was in Miami. But the security, once you got your badge, you have to go to the media window, get a badge first, then you have to go through security. It was 45 minutes to get your badge, which is really long. But then it was equally long to get into the stadium. So I didn't even get a chance to fill you in. I had we asked the woman at the window who recognized us because we were at the draft yesterday, hey, I have to do a show in 25 minutes. There's no way I'm going to get to my show with this line. She says, look over there to your right. There's a tent, a white tent. Just go over to that white tent. Show them your credential. They'll take your bag. They'll look through your bag, and they'll let you go into the ballpark. I went from missing my show to being early for my show. I actually had time to prep. Unbelievable turn of events from the last time I texted you. I still wouldn't have been able to do this, but yeah. I was on time for my show.
Yeah, Jim and I usually record early in the morning, usually around 10:30, 11 o'clock Pacific time. But, of course, we're recording this here on Monday at about 2:20. It's okay. Hey, man, you are a busy dude.
Ooh,
I'm on your schedule, so don't worry about it.
Are you going to watch the Derby? You have to watch the Derby.
Of course I'm watching the Home Run Derby.
Oh, my God. It's going to be fun.
It's one of my, I used to love the dunk contest, but then the dunk contest kind of went away just because, recognizable players didn't play anymore. But I love the Home Run Derby because you still get, the top players that are going to participate in it. And you get it this year with Gunnar Henderson and Pete Alonso and Ozuna and Teoscar. You got some, just great storylines and hitters, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, a little sleeper, Bobby Witt Jr., he's local. Yeah. And so he's obviously up there with Gunnar Henderson. I think that Jose Ramirez is in it again. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Teoscar, which would be good. So, Ozuna's had a sneaky good year too. I think he and Alonso for me are the front runners. And here's one little tip: Alonso has won it twice with his BP thrower. His name is Dave Joust. Now, Dave is an old friend of mine. He's been a longtime coach in the major leagues for forever. He was roommates with my cousin in college a long time ago. Okay, he's in his mid-60s, and he is back throwing batting practice to Pete Alonso. He hasn't been there, so keep an eye on that because he throws darts, and he throws it in the same location every single time. I don't know how he does it.
I don't know. I remember watching last year, even though he didn't win, but Julio's guy that he flew up from the Dominican was unbelievable. It had that perfect little break to it, and it landed in the same spot every time. I'm like, how does he do that every time?
As a person who throws batting practice, it's unbelievable how they're able to throw it in the same spot every time. And that Julio beat Pete Alonso. That was this year with the way they changed the rules is the top 4 would be. They go on to the next round, and then they seed them based on how many home runs they hit. So Julio and Alonso, under these rules, would have been into the Final Four last year. But, Pete got eliminated because Julio was so good. Yeah. And, I kind of like that little adjustment that they have this year for the Home Run Derby.
All right, Jim Duquette again with us. I want to jump right into it. It was a story that emerged here in the last, 48 hours. I think it was Bob Nightingale, USA Today, who reported the Mariners appear to be the front runner, emerging as the front runner to land Jazz Chisholm of the Miami Marlins. I think out here in Seattle, I think feelings have been mixed on this one. What's the latest with it? How interested are the Mariners, in fact, in acquiring him? And does it make sense from them?
So they're definitely interested, and, I was able to look into this a little bit on my own to just kind of confirm, because, Bob Nightingale's, he's good at breaking stuff, but, there's also, stories that sometimes he doesn't get right. So you have to be careful on this, but no, there's definitely some teeth to this. And listen, there are, still an uncertain number of offensive players that are going to be available. He's one that you have to definitely consider. You have him under control for a couple more years. He's a left-handed bat. He's athletic. He can play different positions. They're going to play him at second. Miami is, to showcase him. Oh, by the way, he would be a really good fit with Seattle at second base. We talked about that last week. So he brings a lot to the equation. He brings an energy level. He brings a speed component. A little bit of swag too. So those are the positives. I mean, there are negatives, no question. It's going to be costly, but I think because you have multiple years of control with Jazz, that is why I think he would be ultimately a good fit for the Mariners.
Okay, what are we talking about price-wise? I mean, are we talking about it has to be one of the, their top prospect in the organization is one of the top prospects in baseball is Cole Young, and then it's Harry Ford and Colt Emerson. It definitely costs them one of those guys?
One of those guys is going to have to be in it, for sure. Yep, and then, after that, it'd be a depth piece. It'd be, probably top 10, but, they don't have as much depth as other teams, so their top 10 maybe isn't quite as strong as, let's say, the Orioles' top 10 is, as an example. But you'd have to be one of those three, plus probably two others, to get them. And I think the timing is right because I think he's, in some ways, worn out his welcome down there in Miami. So you're not going to have to give up, even though it would cost you one of those premium guys, it's not going to it won't cost you two like it would some other, premium type players.
And they would, just going off their prospect list, they're going to ask for Young, and I would assume Dipoto would say no to that one. Who's the likeliest candidate?
Well, I think
Ford?
I think Ford is, yes, because you've got Raleigh, and there's the calls to keep him in a Mariners uniform, and he wants to be there, and he's a really good fit there. And I think that Ford's the guy, and Ford, is got starting to get some versatility to play other positions, but you can't let a guy like that kind of get in the way. And the Marlins need position players. They're in position player prospects to help them. I go back to when they first traded for Jazz. They traded a young starting pitching prospect named Zach Gallen, who's now one of the best ones in the sport. But that's what it took to get Jazz, and Jazz was only in Double-A at the time. But they needed position players really badly, and they're in a similar situation. They have a lot of pitching depth, but they don't have as much position player depth.
What you mentioned before, how he's worn out his welcome in Miami. Okay, in what regard has he worn out his welcome?
So he's a guy that plays with an energy and a confidence and a swag that in some circles doesn't fit. If you're an old school guy, people don't like that. It's not like it's anything that is antagonistic. If you watch him, if he hits a home run, he'll pimp some home runs. It's not unlike what you see around the sport these days. He's a young, energetic player, loves to express his emotions. I think the one thing that had some people raising their eyebrows is you go back to this summer when he was critical of his relationship with Miguel Rojas. Miguel Rojas is a really quality human being and a quality player, and he was a leader. And Jazz criticized him, for a couple of different things there. And, and one of the instances got a lot of eye roll was he said, well, if he was a true leader, he would have woken me up from my naps before the start of the game.
That's the best one I've ever heard, man.
Isn't that great?
Jim, it's the best. Like, he's mad because, for people who know the story, Jazz Chisholm was mad at Miguel Rojas because Jazz was sleeping before a game and had missed a team meeting and he blames Rojas because Rojas saw him sleeping and didn't wake him up.
Right. He said he's not a leader. A good leader would have awakened him instead of taking responsibility, saying, that's on me. I'm sleeping through and he likes to take a nap, before the game, which a lot of players do.
Sure.
But they don't sleep through team meetings. They set the alarm. They have, they have somebody in their corner that's there to wake them up. That one is one of those that he's going to end up down the road regretting if he hasn't already. Sometimes when you're young, you do say dumb things, but that happened this year, and I feel like that was like a final straw there for the Marlins. Skip Schumacher's their manager there. I don't know if he's going to be back, but Skip's trying to set a culture there, and I think that he's probably worn out his welcome from the sounds of it.
He was also, Jim, a couple of years ago, critical of Don Mattingly when he was the skipper there. It was a game in which he had done well the previous night. Then he's not in the lineup the next night. They're facing a tough left-hander, and he goes to social media to complain about it, and he retweets a bunch of things that are critical of Don Mattingly, calling him a terrible manager and things like that. He seems like he's a lot to take on. That he's not everyone's cup of tea inside a clubhouse. Is that fair to say with him?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I mean, listen, the Mariners in certain circumstances, they've appeared to be overly sensitive when they do get criticized from the players. And so that does make me wonder a little bit, if this guy would be a good fit with the front office, and if they would be willing to extend, which it doesn't sound like they will, nor will they have to. But guys change and mature. I remember Jose Iglesias, who right now is playing well for the Mets. He's been a complimentary piece, but he didn't have the greatest reputation when he first came up as a Detroit Tiger there with Miggy and everything else. And he's been with several teams. He's been with Cincinnati. He's with the Baltimore. He's with the Angels. Guys who hop around like that sometimes, don't have a kind of a checkered reputation. He is a great kind of, I would call him a glue guy, a chemistry guy for the Mets right now. And so guys change over time, and there's not enough talented players to have all these, I call them the church angels. You have a clubhouse full of angels. I'm going to find you a team that's not very good. Like you need guys with attitude, and there's some guys that you want with grit. You want guys with leadership. You want guys who are kind of jerks. Like you want a blend because you want talented players. Jazz Chisholm is a talented player.
Is he a good teammate though?
I think from everything I can tell, he's a good teammate. He's a supportive teammate. He's made some young player mistakes, but he is a good teammate. And he showed a willingness to move positions when the team needed a center fielder. He had never played there before, but he was willing to go out there and play center field. And early on, it didn't look very good last year, but it got better as the season went on. He really worked hard at it. And he's also willing to go back to second base. They were asking him to play second base. So those are positive signs in terms of him being a good teammate.
He, I think it was last year, right, on the 2023, he's on the cover of MLB The Show. I mean, he has been, I guess from afar, he has been billed as a superstar, top 5 player in the game, Jim. But he hasn't it's fair to say that he hasn't necessarily played like a top 5 player in baseball.
That's correct. I don't view him as a top 5 player. I think that they were hopeful that he would grow into that type of player. And, I think that he has the ability to be, I'd say a top 20 player, something along those lines. If you look at each of his skills, he's very skilled offensively, a little bit heavy on the strikeout sometimes, but, he can hit. He hit for power. He can run. He can steal a bag for you. He can defend. He can play multiple positions up the middle, which is hard to find. So there are some qualities that make him a top 25 player. So he's had a bunch of injuries, in fairness to him, and probably has delayed his development to this point.
Is that a concern though? The injury history. I mean, he's entering his third, fourth, fifth. He's in his fifth year right now in baseball, and he's, the most amount of games he's played one season is 124.
Yeah.
Is that injury history a concern for you?
So it would be, a little one to be cautious with for sure. It looks like he's going to be, he's playing on a pace to play probably the most in his career this year. Again, if he stays healthy. But guys figure out a lot of times those. I had Jose Reyes, who was a often injured player early in his career, especially with the lower half in his. Some of them were out of his control, and he figured out how to stay healthy and play smart. The Twins have gone through this with Byron Buxton. Byron Buxton has tremendous value and talent, even for the few games that he played. He's played 100 games a couple times. That's it. So, even if Chisholm were to, get injured, you would get value out of him. But I do think you have to bake that into what you're willing to give up. You have to go to their general manager, who's young, first year. Peter Bendix, his name, is the president of baseball operations on his first gig, and basically, negotiate the fact that he's been injured and out. And that does cut down on the price. That's, again, another reason why you don't have to give up two premium guys for him. It would just be one.
Is it simply, Jim, just money why the Marlins want to move on from him?
I think that they're trying to take assets that they have and turn them into multiple pieces to be major leaguers, right? So they're going to get back multiple major leaguers. You're going to have to wait, for one or two, but they're looking for young, controllable talent so that their next good major league team, is one that they have for a long period of time. And if you look at what Tampa has done, because that's where Peter Bendix, who runs the Marlins, came from, they're used to taking kind of guys who've been on the scene for 3-4 years, moving them for multiple pieces, and they traded at one point, he was a part of this. They traded Chris Archer for Tyler Glasnow, and there was a left-handed power bat that ended up going on to Detroit. His name escapes me at the moment, and they got one other player. I think it was Shane Baz. Shane Baz is still with Tampa. They traded Glasnow for Ryan Pepio and one or two other players. And then, whoever I can't remember who they got. They traded to the Tigers. I think it was Itzhak Paredes, who's an all-star for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Tampa does. They take these players at their peak and trade them for younger players. And I think that's what he's trying to do there in Miami with a guy like Jazz. They have Tanner Scott, who's a relief pitcher, left-handed relief pitcher. By the way, Seattle might decide to expand the deal, and try to get a Tanner Scott or a relief pitcher. They have a kid named Andrew Nardi, who's a pretty good pitcher. So that might be a way to, really settle two spots on the roster that I think you need some depth in.
How much better does it make him if they acquire him?
Well, it's a big upgrade, but they need two bets, not one. They need two. And, I also wonder this. Josh Bell has not played well. He's been in the funk. But I also wonder if they took Josh Bell in his salary, Miami could save some money. It lowers the cost of the prospects, and you get two pieces, and Josh Bell gets an opportunity to start over in a different place. And he is a talented guy, switch hitter who has power. Sure. When they first traded for him, he did well for the Marlins. I wonder if there's a deal like that gets expanded. So don't rule that out either.
Yeah, talking to Bill Kruger today, he that's what he was thinking. He was thinking that if you're going to dance with them, let's see if Josh Bell is available. And he also mentioned, I don't think he's pitching all that well this year, but he also mentioned someone like A.J. Puck there in the bullpen because they need, the Mariners with the Orioles, with facing Houston, with Alvarez. I mean, they're going to get Gabe Spire back, but they need probably another lefty in their bullpen,
sure,
to kind of help them. And that, he threw out the idea of it, maybe even adding A.J. Puck, that they could do a deal that involves all three of those guys.
They absolutely could do that. See, I love those type of deals because you expand them. You're willing to take on some money. You show your fan base you're willing to take on money because they're still, as we've talked about, they're highly skeptical of this. But again, sometimes you get these guys who have a change of scenery. Puck obviously pitched in the division. He was with Oakland prior to that. He was in the J.J. Bleday trade. Bleday went back to Oakland. So, Puck would be a really good fit back, if that was a situation again. But, again, you're trying to fill multiple needs in a trade. And if you can go to one spot to do it, because Miami's willing to trade, I would like that too.
What's the latest with Luis Robert Jr.? What's the market right now for him? How much is it heating up? And I would hope and think the Mariners are in on him as well. But what's the latest with him?
Yeah, the market is, it's going to take a premium, probably 2 premium prospects. And that's where I think the holdup is right now. Okay. There's a few teams that, like the Phillies want them. They don't need them. So, Chris Getz, their general manager, isn't able to get what he wants in that sense. Seattle, it's not a perfect fit. He wants to play center field. He would have to move to a corner. You're not moving Julio to the corner, so you have to move Robert. That's not a great fit. It's a good fit offensively, but it's not a perfect fit defensively. Those are things that you have to be concerned about. I think he can handle right field fine. Wouldn't be an issue for me. But, and there's some other teams that have to, come into the mix yet, but that hasn't been fleshed out yet because the National League is so muddied and watered down right now with that wild card.
If the Mariners were to make this move for Chisholm, right, everyone's going to do a grade on it. Your reaction would be what? Tell Mariner fans what if they do it. What would you tell them? Your thoughts on the deal if they were to pull it off?
Again, it depends on who else is in it. If they could get a second piece, I would say it would be one of the more significant trades that we will see at this deadline. I'd say it's at least a B trade. That would be in that range. It's not the Luis Castillo trade, which I gave an A trade grade to. Getting him in that trade, there a couple of years ago, that was a perfect fit. And then I gave it an A because they signed him long term. Jazz is one of those where, depending on how much you have to give up here, I think it would probably be a B trade. If they gave up, Emerson, I don't think I'd like that as much. Mm-hmm. I'd probably downgrade the grade if he was included in it. But if Ford was in it, I think it's fair value, and I think he would be a huge fit. But I also think that they need to do more. I want to give them a full grade for the entire trade deadline. This grade would be good, but it wouldn't be good enough for what they need.
Has anybody else emerged as possibly being on the trading block around baseball? We've talked about all the normal guys, right? Yep. Chisholm came up late. We've talked about Luis Robert plenty of times, you and I. We've talked about Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Pete Alonso. But anybody else now starting to emerge as a possible fit for Seattle?
So Detroit has Mark Canha, and you saw him in the division before. He's a quality bat. He's more of a 6-hole hitter, but he's a patient hitter. He's more of a contact type guy. He has occasional power, hits lefties well. He's an outfielder, versatile outfielder, veteran presence. I'd like to see them go after him too. If they got Chisholm and Canha, that'd be a pretty good trade deadline for them from the offensive side of things. Outside of that, there's still some question whether the Cubs are in it or not. They've won 7 of the last 10, I think it is. Pirates have won 7 of the last 10, so they're in it right now. But I think Toronto's the other spot that, within reason, DH-wise, they have Justin Turner. You can decide if he's a fit. Turner could play first. He could DH.
Sure.
You could kind of move him around a little bit. You got to keep him off his feet because he's 38, 39 years old. He's not having a great season, but he's a run producer, for me. And remember, we talked about this before. Those baseball rats, those guys who love to talk hitting around the cage, J.D. Martinez's, Justin Turner's in that group. He would help that offense immeasurably just with his experience and knowledge.
What are the? I'm going to circle back to the Mariners here for a quick second. They wouldn't be interested in this guy. Well, maybe they would. Who knows? Maybe they want to add more pitching to it. I saw a report that maybe Detroit would be interested in listening to a trade offers for Skubal. Well, why would they want to do that?
I don't think those reports are true.
Okay.
I talk to AJ Hinch every week on my show, and they are, they're trying to improve this year, and hard to believe, but they're, I think, 2 games behind Tampa. in terms of wild card, and
Yeah.
they're not that far out, not that far from 500. They're trending up, and they're trying to improve their stead in the standings. So I don't have any indication that they would make him available.
Yeah. And then you still maintain with people that you've talked to around there at the All-Star game in Texas that Toronto's not going to move. Still sounds like they will not move Bichette or Guerrero.
I asked about that recently again, and there's a lot of pressure on that front office right now.
Yeah.
If they traded one of those two guys, they'd get run out of town. They would. I mean, it would be that bad. They're not very popular right now, anyway. But if they traded one of those guys, they would. It would be ugly. So I think that's another secondary reason. But they're still committed to just trading guys that are going to be free agents at the end of the year.
As we stand now, the Mariners just limped into this All-Star break. They once had a commanding 10-game lead. Now it's all the way down to one game. I mean, really, if Houston had played better, here in the last week or so, they would be leading the division right now. They will face off in that first series at home in Seattle between the M's and Houston. Can they hold them off, or do you see Houston overtaking them at some point?
It's going to be tough to hold them off. And here's my bigger. Or an additional concern, Texas is all of a sudden 5 games back, and they're starting to get healthy. They've been good, and they've had a ton of injuries, and I would not discount them either. Like, this division, it's gotten more and more competitive and a lot tighter, not just because of Seattle's step back, but Houston in particular has made huge strides. But Texas has been lurking, I'll call it. So and they have supposedly Jacob deGrom getting closer, down the stretch run, and the Scherzer's already back, and they could make a trade. They could take Andrew Heaney and go get an offensive piece, and they have a couple of offensive guys that have been injured. So, but I think it's going to be difficult. Can they keep Houston off? Yeah, but they need to make a couple of trades, and it may not be in time for this series. But they absolutely need to do that by July 30th.
If Houston can snap their finger, who do they want right now? Who's the big move they would like to add at the deadline?
They're trying to add starting pitching. Their starting pitching has been injured. They have 3 or 4 of their original starters on the IL. I think Verlander's still on the IL. They're looking at Crochet. I think it's going to be. I don't think they have the prospects to do that. But Eric Fetty's a name that they just need to get some innings until some of those guys come back healthy. But they're looking at pitching right now more than anything.
Let me ask you something. Logan Gilbert's last start, there's a lot of criticism out here. He goes 7 innings, he throws 87 pitches, and listen, the Mariners are not alone in how they're treating starters right now, and they've never really let them go over 100 pitches. I want to say his career high is like 108 pitches, I think. Do you understand what they're doing? Do you agree with it, though, what the Mariners are doing and then what other teams are doing in baseball and how they handle their starters now?
I don't agree with how, as an industry, we're handling. And they're really handling some of these pitchers with kid gloves, almost putting them in bubble wrap, right? I think this is the bubble wrap era of pitching, and so, but I also understand, like, 7 innings and the number of pitches is there's a similar workload that we didn't factor in that I think is factored in now, and so I think that I understand 7 innings that he still has something left in the tank. I understand that aspect, but they've done a pretty darn good job of keeping their guys healthy. So I'm hopeful that because of this protection, that down the stretch, when they do, and they're in a similar situation, they do need him to go that extra inning or 2, that they'll let him do it. And that's where I think the proof will be is what do they do in August and September?
Okay, there he is, Jim Duquette with us every Monday talking all things of baseball. He says if they pull off the trade for Chisholm, he'll give it a B, but they still need to add more. They need to add at least 2 bats. Jim Duquette, former Major League Baseball GM, Mets and Orioles, all brought to you by Flat Stick Pub. Check out his show, MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM. Follow him on X at Jim Duquette GM every Monday here at Puck Sports and pucksports.com. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, Jim.